Hey parents and coaches, are your kids using the right glove? The most important skill for youth athletes to learn is how to play proper catch. The problem is, most youth gloves are made with bad leather and are too big for small hands. They actually make it harder to play catch. That's why former Major League Baseball shortstop Kevin Smith created Cali gloves. Cali gloves are crafted from 100% Japanese kip leather and are the perfect size for kids. All Cali gloves come with palm slits, finger loops, and elastic wrist lacing that encourage proper hand placement, the right closing patterns, and give kids more confidence to go make plays. Cali gloves even allow parents to break in the glove without stretching out the fit. It's the glove Kevin wishes he had growing up, and the glove all his teammates want for their kids. Visit caligloves.com to learn more and help your kids play better catch. That's Cali Gloves, K-A-L-I gloves.com.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Dugout Dish Podcast. I'm Andy Kiriakides. I am unfortunately not joined by my wonderful co-host, Mr. Keith Glasser, but I do have two distinguished gentlemen that'll be joining me today. One of them, most of you listeners will know, Mr. Jonathan Grasset. How are you?
What's up, guys? How are you?
And we also have, he's number 34 in your programs back in the day. He's number one in your hearts always. He was the first guest on this podcast, and he's returning for today's episode as a pundit, Mr. Eric Suplee. What's up, buddy?
Very excited to be here. First appearance as a non-baseball coach anymore. It's really exciting. So ready to kickstart my next career.
We're glad to have you on here for some insight. You're as well informed as anybody out there, so this is going to be fun. Obviously, we had the regionals this past weekend. It was freaking electric, all the way down to watching West Virginia's whole stadium sing Country Roads, which was just gave me goosebumps watching that all unfold. It was pretty awesome. But I'm going to kick it over to you, Jonathan, to start us off with some opening thoughts on the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. What do you got?
Yeah, I think it was awesome, right? I mean, for the first time ever, we got, since we went to a super regional format, we have 2 4 seeds in super regionals, which, I think goes to show the parity, in this tournament, and the parity at, the Division I level is, overall number 1 out, overall number 2 out. It was wild. I mean, I saw, some people that, were, had bigger social media presences that maybe haven't, followed, as closely as, the three of us, and obviously Keith as well. But, talking about May Madness, and it's no longer March Madness and it's May Madness. And I think the TV presence, I think the social media presence, I think the tournament got exactly what it deserved, and it was awesome, man. I mean, to sit here and say that, UCLA and Georgia Tech would not be in a super regional, I think last week I would have thought you were absolutely crazy. But play really good for, 3 or 4 days, and, you end up in a super, i.e. St. John's, i.e., Little Rock, and, here we are. And I think it's going to be awesome. I think this weekend's going to be awesome. I think we're going to continue right into Omaha, but what a great start.
No, it was fantastic. Enjoyed every second of it. What do you got, Eric? What are your thoughts? Opening thoughts for today's pod?
First thing I wanted to bring up, because it's been a big hot topic on Twitter, is the umpiring. First, I think the umpires, for the most part in college baseball, have gotten a lot better. It's just like in professional baseball, especially when you start thinking about the strike zone and how hard it is to call balls and strikes when the ball's moving 95 to 97 half the time, it seems like. But from that standpoint, the umpiring has been fantastic. But then I have a huge issue with a lot of the college baseball personalities kind of crucifying some of these guys on the ejections and stuff. And I think the 2 biggest ones are probably Landon Harrison being ejected for his bat flip, and then the Trey Phelps incident. And I think the NCAA really needs to do a good job this offseason of writing out clear guidelines of what an ejection is. I don't blame the umpires. What Trey Phelps did to me, that warrants an ejection. If you saw Blake Sears' home run against Miami, I thought that warranted an ejection. And it's there's no rule. There's no rule for what it is really. It's very there's a lot of gray area. And then also the Landon Hairston one, and people defending, saying it's an ump show. The guy struck out and flipped his bat 15 feet in the air. Like, dude, get out of the game, man. You can't do that. So I think it's hard. It's really hard right now for these guys. And I thought overall they did a really exceptional job. Balls and strikes, all things considered. The umpiring has gotten better because there's so many stadiums with TrackMan and they're held accountable. So, but I think the NCAA needs to do something about what warrants an ejection and have like clear-cut guidelines for umpires on this. Because here at University of San Francisco, we had the same kid ejected twice for bat flipping. And, along the lines of what we saw in the regionals, it was very mild bat flips. But, those umpires thought it warranted it, and that's what happened. But I think they need clear guidelines. And the other thing, I mentioned it earlier, the velocity and stuff. There were a lot of tweets going around with the average velocity, the average fastball velocity of each regional and each team. And we have some teams making it that they're in the upper 80s or whatever it might be. And then you have, say, I'll use them just because I'm familiar with them, but Wake has the highest fastball velocity in the country, 94.4, I think it is. Well, if you're a team that it's at 89 miles an hour, you can win a regional that way. You can have a really good weekend. But good luck going through an entire season in the ACC or SEC pitching at that velocity. It's not going to work. I'm sorry. Like, it's not gonna work. If you've ever been to Wake Forest Ballpark and the wind's blowing in the wrong direction, 89 miles an hour is going to get turned around and deposited so quickly. You have to have stuff for a season long of the ACC, Big 12, SEC. Even in our conference this year, you look at the fastball velocities, they're starting to go through the roof. But I think people are really cherry picking some of these teams that had good weekends. And don't get me wrong, it's one weekend, it's baseball, it's college baseball. They're 18 to 20, 24-year-olds now. Anything can happen. But to say that you don't need stuff and that these higher velocity programs, that's not what's most important. I think you really need to evaluate what would happen over, 10 conference weekends pitching at 89 miles an hour on average at some of these places. So those are my two big things that I got out of regionals. Well, more, but I think Rosse did a pretty good job with the other stuff.
No, the ejection thing, you nailed it, man. I think all of those guys crossed the line. I think defending it as let the kids have fun is, and I like some excitement. I like some kids showing some energy and having some passion. But there's lines that gets crossed, and I think you're spot on with that. And
I think once you cross to the other team, warn everyone, whatever it is, and if you go overboard, get them out of the game. But once you cross the line of you're no longer showing emotion towards your own team, at least a warning, and do it fast. And I think the umpires need to do that. And I hope in the supers they're quick to give warnings out and just be like, hey guys, show emotion, show energy, do it towards your own dugout, do it towards your own teammate.
I think it'll give us the best product though too, right? Because we don't want to see, and I agree with you with the ejection.
Yeah, I want to see Trey Phelps play, man.
For sure. I don't think that regional should be determined without him on the field. You know what I mean? So
he's missing
just
game one.
Flat. As long as everybody's on the same page, we're all good. Quick with the warnings, whatever you want to do, but just make it just across the board so you don't have such variation in terms of what the rule actually is.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to miss game one against Mississippi State. They need him. He's a fantastic player. I mean, he's freaking electric to watch. And to your point, Eric, I want to see that dude play. I thought there was two bolts that got hit. The Oklahoma walk-off at Georgia Tech and the West Virginia walk-off in the first game of the elimination series, the first game that West Virginia had to those are like perfect examples of what it should look like, where they took a good look at it because both of those balls were absolutely tallywhacked, and they got around the bases, but it was like fiery and exciting and emotional, but they never looked at the other team. For me, that was like the perfect amount, as to set an example. But the velocity stuff, Eric, like I actually looked at it slightly different, where people were highlighting like, oh, well, they throw 89. And I agree with everything you said. But the flip side of it was that it's like 57 or 58 of the teams that were in the tournaments, average fastball velocity was over 90.
Dude, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We'd be playing teams this year, and like we're in a midweek. It's like the random guy pitching the fifth inning in a 6-2 game comes out, and you're like, oh, he's 91 to 93.
Yeah.
He
That was
might be
my
throwing it
take.
off the backstop, but like, yeah, man, things have changed. Things have changed a lot.
I think it's just as impressive to see some of the run scoring, and everybody wants to chalk it up to walks and guys can't command the strike zone. I think the hitters are maybe I don't know if caught up is the best word, but velocity just doesn't intimidate anybody anymore.
I think if I got to watch a lot of Ole Miss this last in their regional just because they were on late. It seemed like every game they played Arizona State was going into 18 innings or something. And dude, like their whole lineup might be over like 230. Like these guys aren't trying to hit backside singles anymore. I mean, you're totally right. The hitters have kind of caught up. They're physical. They miss hit balls really far. Like it's awesome. I think it's super cool. It's a totally different game than what we played.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I got a couple things that I thought were interesting this weekend. I think it was a really, really tough weekend for the ACC. And North Carolina is the only team to make it out of a regional. None of the 2 or 3 seeds that made it from the ACC even made it to a regional final. Obviously, Florida State and Georgia Tech had tough losses where both teams lost twice and couldn't get, or excuse me, Georgia Tech lost twice and St. John's ran the table at Florida State. But that was a tough weekend for the ACC. And I don't know if I don't think the ACC is taking a step back. I think it's more of a reflection of, I think the regionals are the hardest part of the NCAA tournament, and I don't think it's close. Having to win 4 games, play 5 games, in some cases to get out of a regional, it's freaking hard. And even the best teams in the country, like UCLA, you get into that losers bracket and it gets really, really difficult. And I also think that's why the regional round for me is the most fun, because you see some crazy stuff happen. And I think it's what makes it awesome. Like St. John's and Little Rock being able to make it out of a regional as 4 seeds. I mean, it's why you watch this thing, because crazy stuff happens. And it's, credit to those 2 teams. I was texting with Coach Brown this morning, congratulating him because he's awesome. And kid from my hometown plays third base for him. And it's a really fun team to watch. They play super hard. They compete their butts off. And then the other thing was, I think some of the defense that's being played is just absolutely outstanding. And the athleticism, the ability to make the routine play, the ability to go beyond the routine play. I mean, there's been some plays made that change innings, that prevent runs. It was overall just incredibly impressed with the physicality, the athleticism that was displayed. And I think a lot of that actually shows up on the defensive side of the ball.
Totally agree. Like the defense, and I talked about the physicality with Ole Miss as an example. You usually think about some of these guys that are in some of these lineups, and you're like, oh, well, he's just like a DH donkey and stuff. And then you see him make a defensive play. Like, well, what is going on out there? But you're totally right. The athleticism, the amount of money that teams spend now on, especially at the higher levels, strength and conditioning coaches, nutrition at facilities, stuff like that, and how much emphasis is put on that. And that really leads towards, corner outfielders run like deer and they hit tanks. And everyone sees the offensive side, but I mean, man, there was a play in the Oregon State game where the left fielder made this ridiculous diving catch on a ball that I mean, it had to be like 105 plus off the bat, and it's like, dude, how? That's amazing. You know,
How
in
about the
lower
play
levels of
Georgia
college
Tech made?
baseball, that's a triple. Like, it's ridiculous. But you have to, with how hard these guys are hitting the ball now. You have to have defenders all over the place at the higher levels.
Dude, how about the play? I know we talked about it. How about the play that the Georgia Tech shortstop made in the ninth to even give them a chance?
Yeah,
You know,
we're texting each other like, how is he out?
I'm like, he was out. I'm like, how? I'm like, how is he out? Like, that's a hit like every day of the week, I thought.
Well, they make some of these plays look way more routine than they actually are. You know, a couple shortstops coming in on the ball that, you know, they're smooth, they're athletic, they got a ton of hand speed and arm speed to make these throws, but they make it look simple. And I think if you go back 10 years, like, you don't see quite as much of what we're seeing right now. And it, to your point, Eric, I think it's a testament to a lot of the work that these kids put in off the field. But I mean, I'm blown away every year, and this year's no different. I'm a sucker for some really good infield defense, and there was plenty of it this week. So
I don't want to sound like a new age warrior here, but a lot of this is, you know, being able to machine use ground balls, being able to hit, you know, being able to put balls and have these kids practice it. You know, guys can hit the best fungo ever, but you know, you watch in like a BP session for an SEC team, they travel with machines and they shoot machines all through BP and stuff and in IO and whatnot. And they're working on balls you just can't hit as a fungo. And they practice this stuff all the time. And it's like coaching has gotten a lot better and the players have responded and they are able to do things because they, you know, that play that guy for Georgia Tech for the shortstop made, like I bet he's made that play, you know, multiple times in the last week off a machine probably. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know what they do. But like I think you have more access to tougher plays like that and doing more difficult things in practice than guys have ever done.
Matt Kirby's the only guy that I could see being able to just manipulate fungos. It's the best fungo guy I've ever seen in 20 plus years of college baseball. But outside of that, I'm not sure. I think you're right. Just better practice, better access. I mean, and that goes to, you talk about machines. You wonder why guys are really good at handling velocity. You can mimic it.
Everybody takes BP off velocity machines throughout the week. You get some teams. You get some teams that in BP, and I don't totally agree with this, but pregame BP, they've got machines set up on the field, you know, right or wrong. But, you know, they're either spinning breaking balls or it's carry fastballs and a lot of velocity. And you know, it's hard. It's hard. You see guys getting blown up and stuff, and you're trying to evaluate swings, and you're like, we don't have anybody that throws that hard. But that's where we're at right now, and it's good and it's bad. But guys are getting on time with better velocity, better than they ever have before. And you listen to some of the stats that some of these announcers are rolling out, and like there was a guy in the West Virginia regional that he was like, on fastballs over 94 miles an hour, his OPS is over 1,000. You're like, say that again.
It's why you see guys who throw 95 with a heavy mix of off-speed stuff. I mean, the last night kid from Kentucky, big dude, he's a transfer from Western Kentucky. He's 94, 96. He had a sequence where I think he threw 6 straight sliders. And I think it's because, I mean, you tell me, you guys are both pitching guys, but at a certain point, that slider is a better pitch than 95 because guys are so comfortable swinging at velocity and being on time for it.
The value of the average slider is higher than an above average fastball. And I'm not making that up. Like that's data. Like those are actual numbers. But yeah, Like you need to, it's almost like you need to throw hard so that your off speed is hard to make it better. And again, unless you have some serious metrics and something unique on your fastball, you really got to be throwing that thing really hard. You look at some of the best fastballs in baseball and pro ball, college, whatever, and it's usually not tied to velocity. It's about release height, approach angles. Something is unique about that fastball that makes it usable at, say, even a 50% clip without getting tallywhacked all over the yard.
Like Logan Redman,
Great example.
just throwing balls that look like they're getting launched off a go-kart ramp.
Yeah, like the guy we talked about this yesterday, the guy throwing for St. John's. I mean, I could probably look it up right now, but like he threw all fastballs and he just obliterated. And it was, I don't know, 91, 93, I think. It was good, but he's throwing all fastballs against an ACC lineup, and when it was up at the top of the zone, it's not getting hit, and it's a low slot, and it looks like it's ride run, and it's not normal. It's not. It's very unique, and that's also where you get into like that pitch isn't able. You're not able to duplicate that really with a machine unless you've got like a traject. So the average college program can't duplicate that fastball. They can get to 93, but there's something on that pitch, metrically, release height, whatever it is, that's unique that you can't duplicate and hitters don't see very often.
The kid from Liberty, who their closer who started against Georgia in the elimination game, was really similar, where, and you guys are both much more informed on this than me, but really unique approach angle, release height, extension metrics. And it wasn't like he was top, 98, 99. It was 93. And he's just arguably the best offense in college baseball, right up there with Georgia Tech. And I mean, he stuffed it on him for 5 innings, just absolutely stuffed it on him for 5 innings.
And again, this isn't anything new with baseball. It's just, and this is, I think, something that the older guys have problems with is you can just quantify it now. There's a machine that tells you exactly what the ball is doing, and it's okay. Like, it's okay. But yeah, you can just actually quantify unique traits now, and it's not just eyeballing it. You can actually have concrete evidence of why this fastball, like there's 2% of college baseball fastballs that do this. We should throw it more often than the guy that's in like the 10%, 10 percentile of movement and all that stuff. So I think it's awesome. And I think it's really cool that some of the announcers were pretty well versed on it, and they're doing some of the guys are doing a really good job explaining why these pitchers are doing what they're doing. I think when they talk about exit velocities and like how hard the ball is actually being hit on some of these, some of these home runs, talking about the distances and stuff, I think it's great. It's measurable, like concrete evidence of how good the game is. And I think it's awesome.
I concur 100%. As a data guy, I think it's just, if nothing else, it's fun. Like, even if you don't care that much about it, it's fun to know that a dude hit a ball with a 23-degree angle and hit it 479 feet, and it was traveling at 109 miles an hour. Like, that's fun. I don't care what you say. It's fun. All right. Let's get to some super regional talk here. And I'm going to start with, get your guys' thoughts on the Lawrence Super Regional, because I think Kansas had one of the most impressive weekends. I thought that they had the toughest regional. And it wasn't a cakewalk for them, but I don't know if they really ever broke a sweat. And I think it says a lot given the quality of the teams that were in that regional, with Arkansas, with Missouri State, and with Northeastern. And a Northeastern team that has been playing really, really well. I thought that they were as impressive as it gets, and they got Oklahoma coming to them. And what Oklahoma did to beat Georgia Tech, I don't know how people, I'm not sure if people understand how difficult it is to come out of the losers bracket and do what they did. Really, really impressive. So, Jonathan, what do you got? What do you got for this matchup?
Yeah, Gross, say before you start, can we go like back 8 years to being back in the Ivy League, and every time we're at some random game in Texas and Fitzgerald's there, we're like,
It's been brought up.
dude, this
Eric,
guy
you
is
were not on last
everywhere.
week. I broke out if South Carolina, if you're serious, you'll just hand him the check and just say you can fill the numbers out yourself. So
Dude, we've been Kansas believers before we even got to Kansas.
He had that thing rolling. We played him when I was at Brown, when he was the third base coach for Dallas Baptist. And they had a dude, I can't think of his name right now at the top of my head. He went to Boston in the third round, and I gave him the best compliment I think I've ever given a hitter. And it was, we would get 2 strikes on him, and the adventure had literally just begun. Like, he was money at Dallas Baptist. He's been money at Kansas. Everybody knows, kind of my opinion on it. I love them. And I think you said it best, though, right? Like, it wasn't a cupcake. It wasn't a cakewalk. Like, we're going to get to a couple cakewalks here that were pretty simple for some teams. But man, with how easy it kind of looked with the talent in that bracket, it's hard to say anybody was more impressive. And then I guess, the other part of it, right, is Oklahoma probably was the most impressive coming out of the losers bracket too, because of who you had to beat coming out of the losers bracket. It wasn't a situation where St. Mary's eliminated, UCLA and, Poly just kind of walked through that regional. This was Oklahoma had to come back through the losers bracket and then upset, beat Georgia Tech twice. Really, really, really impressive. I'm going to take Kansas. I'm going to stay with Kansas. I just think it's the year of the Jayhawk, and I'm going to say that we get Kansas and Omaha here in, 10 days or so, 15 days.
What do you got, Coach Suplee?
Man, it's hard to disagree with all of that. I actually think Oklahoma was the most impressive, though, because it's not just beating Georgia Tech. If you look at Oklahoma and what they do well, they can pitch, they run a lot, and Georgia Tech is a bandbox. So it's not only that they beat Georgia Tech, who a lot of people, I thought they were one of the best teams in the country, probably an easy top 5 team, probably if we're just talking about talent alone, maybe the best team. But you didn't just beat Georgia Tech; you beat them at their field and playing a game in an environment that you're not really built for. Oklahoma's got 2 guys on the roster with double-digit home runs. I think Georgia Tech did they lead the country in home runs, or maybe they're right behind Georgia, whatever it is. But I thought that was awesome. And going into, there's actually something I do want to bring up. I didn't mention this at the beginning. I'll bring it up after I talk about Kansas, but I think Jonathan's correct with Kansas coming out of this. The shortstop, what's his name? LeBlanc, bro. Dude, that guy is such a good player. I love Kansas's bullpen. They have a bunch of different, they can do a lot of things out of their bullpen. Ton of high spin guys, ton of strikeouts, ton of swing and miss. But one thing I do want to bring up, and Kansas really ran some of their guys into the ground a little bit, and I'm not saying that as a bad way, with their arms, with Ray, for example. You wonder, and it's not just this regional, but the Andy, you hit on this earlier with how hard it is to win a regional, especially if you have to play more than 3 games. You're really running some of these guys into the ground and asking them to do stuff that you haven't asked them to do all year. And it's fine. I'm not like a pitch count by thumper, I'm not Keith Law here. I'm totally fine with this happening occasionally, but you wonder some of these guys, how they're going to recover. And I think that's why it's hard to really predict some super regionals. It's dude, what if Bodie Ray is just, what if he's got a couple ticks off his fastball? I don't know if that's true, but like, what if they're down a couple ticks because of what he just did? Kansas is a totally different team, and for Oklahoma to come out of the losers bracket, like, dude, those guys are running on fumes, and they have to fly back to Oklahoma, and then they have to travel to Kansas, and that for me is why I think Kansas is going to come out of this. But man, that atmosphere there with those two fan bases, old school rivalry, middle of America, like
It's not that far either. It's not that far. They're not that far apart.
They're going to travel well. And there's still not a lot of seating there. It's gonna be it's tight quarters there. I think this is a top 3 super for me. Like, I'm very excited about this one. I think there's athletes all over the field. Both pitching staffs they got some dudes on both sides, and they got a lot of different looks too. So I'm excited about this, but I think being at home, the travel, not playing as many games as Oklahoma did last weekend, I'm on board with Kansas.
Yeah, I don't have a whole ton to follow up. I think you guys hammered that one pretty good, but I'm on the Kansas train, and so is our other host, Mr. Glasser, is also on the Kansas train. So
I will say that one other thing though is if Oklahoma can get on base especially with those bullpen arms, they're not afraid to slam stuff into the ground, and they throw a lot of all speed. They throw a lot of changeups down, a lot of curveballs down. That's late in games. I think they can put some pressure on, and I think there's a couple of regionals actually where there might be a little bit more athleticism and base stealing and kind of where base running is going to come into play, because I think these games are going to be tight. And that could factor in a little bit in Oklahoma's favor. 117 bags.
Yeah,
it's pretty
good. Wow. In the SEC, stealing that many is no joke.
Yeah, because there's a lot of bad catchers in the SEC.
Ton of bad throwers. Nobody likes to hold runners. It's just easy to steal bases there. All right, let's take it. We'll stay on that side of the bracket. We've got the number 4 seed, the New York Darling, St. John's, making a trip down to Tuscaloosa to play the Alabama Crimson Tide. I have some skin in the game here as a young man from my hometown, plays third base for St. John's. I think that calling them just gritty, I think, does them a little bit of a disservice. I think they've got some pretty good position players. The LeGrand kid was the Cape Cod MVP last summer. You don't do that if you're not a really good ball player. The Agresti kid is obviously a difference maker behind the plate and at the plate, with seems to have a little bit of a clutch gene too. I mean, the Grand Slam was kind of that was a tough one for Florida State to swallow, and they really couldn't come back from it. And then on the other side of it, you got Bama, where go back 8 weeks and there was people clamoring about how Rob Vaughn wasn't the right guy for the job. So they
just can't do it, man. He's just not a winner. Rob Vaughn is not a winner, man.
I think, but for me, I think the emotion of it all, the travel, having to go to Alabama, I think Alabama's playing really well at the right time. I think Alabama's going to advance here. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to certainly see St. John's make it there, because I think it'd be incredible. But I think Alabama's going to move on. I believe this will be the first time they've been to the College World Series if they get there, if they can get a job done against St. John's since 1995. So this would be a massive moment for a program that's been on the brink of it a couple times. They lost twice in the Super Regionals to 2 of the best North Carolina teams of all time. They've had some really good moments, but this could be an all-time high for Alabama, and I think they get it done.
If you're the parent of a high school baseball player with college aspirations, you already know the recruiting process can feel overwhelming. Endless showcases, nonstop emails, and big promises with very little clarity. That's why we recommend Diamond College Showcase Camps, the nation's premier academic baseball showcase. At Diamond College Showcases, every college coach in attendance is there with a purpose: to coach, instruct, evaluate, and recruit. Every player is seen, every player is engaged, and every family leaves with a clear understanding of where they truly stand. This is not a mass camp. College coaches run the drills, evaluate every athlete, and provide honest professional feedback that you can trust. Diamond College Showcase camps are built for serious student athletes who value both baseball and academics. If you're looking for transparency, clarity, and a recruiting experience that respects your time and your player's future, Diamond College Showcase is the place to be. To learn more, visit diamondcollegeshowcase.com.
What do you got, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one because, St. John's obviously played Monday. My guess is that the NCAA probably didn't fly them home. They probably kept them down there. I don't know that for sure, but my guess would be is they probably just bust them across. Being in Tallahassee, it's actually not that far from Tuscaloosa. I just think that when you look at it, and I know I brought this up a few times this year, like you have a potential top 10 pick in Justin LeBron, and like he's still, he had an okay regional, but nothing spectacular. And, you're talking about maybe the best, the highest ceiling Pro Bowl player on the field. And Alabama just keeps winning. Like they just keep doing it. They've been really consistent all year. They really haven't, had too many ups and downs. They've been pretty steady Eddie for the most part. Really, if you just take away that, honestly, if you take away that sweep at Kentucky opening SEC weekend, you're talking about a pretty steady Eddie team. I think the Crimson get to Omaha too.
Yeah, I want George Brown to go, but I don't think it's happening. And Andy, you brought this up earlier. It's easier, potentially easier at times to win a regional, it's more difficult to win a regional than it is a super. And I think this is a really good example because Alabama can line up those starters. They've got, those three bullpen arms. And, I don't see St. John's being able to beat those three guys twice. Like maybe you get one and, then you have to face them again. It's not like, oh, we beat, for example, they beat Florida State. Okay, like Florida State goes and plays someone else. And Coastal had to face Beard and Mendez. You're lining up against three really good starters this weekend. And my two favorite teams, which we'll get to later, Andy, one of them. But it's the same thing as when you get in these supers, and the College World Series is similar. You get 5 or 6 good arms, and a lot of these teams just lean on 5 or 6 guys. Like, good luck, man. And Jonathan's correct. They're going to have the best player on the field every single game from here on out, I believe, with LeBron if they make the World Series, and that means something. He's still 40 bags this year, 16 bolts. Like, dude, this is some wild offensive stuff. And I know he had a bad year on defense with making some errors and stuff, but he still makes the incredible play. But for me, the big difference is that rotation, and then being able to line their starters up against St. John's is going to be the kicker for me. Playing at home, I think this is like a 2-Q kind of situation.
Coach Glasser would disagree. He's picking the Johnnies.
Okay, Keith.
All right, so we got writing down our picks here. All right, staying on that same side of the bracket. We get into some firepower here. Next couple regionals here. We got Oregon traveling to Texas. Some pretty good, some pretty talented fellas will be roaming the field at Dish Falk down in Austin this weekend. Jonathan, what do you got here?
This is a tricky one for me because I think there's some X factors that go into some of these decisions, and I know we've talked about it a little bit with travel and how do you handle the regional setting and going to a conference tournament and honestly next week we're going to bring it up again with how do you handle the travel to Omaha. So you have two teams that are going to be super familiar with kind of how this whole thing works, right? Slosh obviously has been, two supers, hosted a bunch, one got to Omaha. He'll have all his ducks in a row. He'll have them ready to play. They're another one, right? Been really, really, really steady. Didn't really have too many issues, to be honest with you, in that regional. Kind of breezed right through it. And then you go to the other side, right? And what Waz has done, and Oregon. I mean, they've been to supers 3 of the last 4 years, right? And this is the second time that they'll host, or they will be a non-host. I'm sorry, they hosted once. So they've had to travel. They've had to do it. They've had to, do the distance. Those guys are ready for it. Again, didn't really have too many issues in their own regional. Kind of breezed right through it. Kept their pitching right in line. And they go down there. I think when I was looking at it earlier today, like, this might be the toughest one to pick when you really go through it. And I'm just going to give a slight nod to Texas. I think the Volantis kid could be an X factor. I think it goes 3 games. I think we're gonna get all 3 here. Texas is home. I'm just gonna give a slight nod to Texas here, but this is a really tough one for me.
What do you got here, Eric?
I am gonna agree. I think Texas is all year long. I think is, for me, one of the 2 best teams in the country. But if you look at their numbers and how both teams play, construction of the pitching staff, these are 2 very similar teams. And it's interesting because I think you have 2 very similar head coaches in ways. They're both really good program guys. They're very calculated in how they construct their programs. They're very well coached, super detail oriented. But I mean, man, they're so both these teams are so athletic. It's ridiculous. Like, I think this is a great example of, it's big physical guys, whatever. But man, these guys can really defend. Both teams really, really defend. They can both really, really pitch. They both throw a lot of strikes. They strike out a lot of people. And this is, like, I think it's an easy one. Just be like, oh, well, they're at Texas. And, if you look at Oregon's travel, and not just this year, but just out of nature of who they are and where they are, they travel a lot. They're not, this isn't going to phase them being on the road and having to go into a hostile environment. But I mean, I'm going to go Texas. Grasse hit Volantis, man, that guy. Some of the arms Oregon's got good arms too, but some of these arms that they can just run out. And I think the strikeout numbers are a little bit more impressive. If the ball's in play a lot for either one of these teams, it's probably a bad thing. Just because it's, if you look at Texas's walk numbers, it's something that they do really well. They drag out at bats, they force pitch counts. I just think they got a little bit more. I could see this being like ugly game, kind of like 8-2 games where both teams kind of throw in the towel halfway through, and then game 3 just being like an epic banger. But I think Texas I think they got a little bit more. They got a little bit more firepower, which is crazy to say because Oregon's got some guys that can absolutely blast it. The kid from Utah, the fresh. Wait till you see this kid if you haven't seen Oregon play yet. Oh, dude. Like, it's a joke, man.
Backside signal, I can tell you that.
Right. He's really trying to annihilate that 4-hole. But I think you're spot on. This could be the best regional as far as the 2 best teams going against each other. Maybe this one, and I don't know, it's hard to say. The Auburn and the Georgia one are pretty incredible too. But this could be the 2 best teams as far as like just playing baseball and being able to do a lot of different things, because they can. Both of these teams can beat you different ways, and I think that'll be really unique in this regional. But I got Texas by a smidge.
I think I'm leaning in that direction as well. I think what I'll highlight, and I hope it lines up like this, I don't know what the rotations are going to be, but Will Sanford versus Dylan Volantis could just be like, stop whatever you're doing and just go watch 2 really dominant and ultra talented arms compete against lineups that are really hard to pitch against. It could be electric. Like on paper, it's probably the best matchup if it happens in the series. If those two pitch against each other, it's probably the best matchup in the supers.
If you haven't seen Volantis pitch and you want to know like what unique like approach angles look like entering the strike zone, like he's kind of a little bit the opposite of, there's a lot of ride and carry and stuff, but watch the depth of his off speed stuff that he throws. Like it's he's like one of those classic guys where you'll be watching him and there's probably some guy in the stands like and yelling at the hitters like, make an adjustment. It's like, bro, dude, I don't think you understand what's going on at home plate.
Hunt the fastball. Up in the box, choke up.
Get your foot down. I mean, Oregon's hitters, if I have one piece of advice, make sure you get your foot down early. But yeah, man, dude, that first, again, I think it's going to be two ugly games, like not close. Maybe like it gets away in the middle of the game, but I think this matchup does have an opportunity. That first game, if those two throw against each other, it could be pretty awesome. All three of the matchups could be potentially. There's so many good players in these supers. It's awesome.
The thing I think I might be most excited about this is that I think people are going to get a chance to watch Oregon and kind of appreciate how good that program is. And there's certainly some East Coast bias when it comes to college baseball, but I think oftentimes they play late. Even if you're a college baseball fan, you're probably not turning on, a 10 o'clock start on a Friday to watch Oregon. And I think it's a really good opportunity to watch a team from the West Coast that is freaking legit. Like, to your point, they play the snot out of defense. They don't have a single everyday player who's made double-digit errors. They're fielding 982. If it hits a glove, it's an out.
Yeah.
They're ultra athletic.
They played a series against USC, and I want to say the last game went in like 14 innings. It was a 2-1 game, and they won on a walk-off safety squeeze. I don't know. I can't remember if it was a suicide or a safety, but they can. It's it kind of sucks. They're on the Big Ten Network. The only time I watch them is when they play Portland and Gonzaga, and they're on ESPN Plus midweeks. Big Ten Network, get it together for all of us. But you're 100% right. There's
time this year the Big Ten Network has received heat on this show. So
I'm really glad that I can just pile on.
Yeah.
But you're totally right. I think this is a cool opportunity to see how good. We thought Martyr was getting Grand Canyon. I don't know if he wanted it or whatever, but that coaching staff at Oregon they do as good of a job as anybody else. Because you still deal with the weather, and it's not. We've gone up there in April before, and it's snowing during BP sometimes. So it's not like it's an easy. They got a lot of cool stuff, but it's not like it's just a baseball hotbed around there either. So they've done an awesome job, and I think it's cool that a lot of people are going to see them for the first time.
All right. Last matchup on this side of the bracket. We're going to Athens. In some ways, it's unfortunate that two teams of this caliber have to face off in the Super Regional, but it is what it is. We're going to get to a couple other matchups that are similar. At least one that in my mind is similar. But got Mississippi State, Georgia. Mississippi State's going to go to Georgia. I got Mississippi State winning it all at the beginning of the year, so that's going to be my pick. It's going to be a grind. I think the difference in this series will be the fact that Mississippi State has so much quality depth on the mound that I think they're going to be able – I think Coach O'Connor will be able to manage that bullpen in a way where you can ideally prevent Georgia from putting up those really big numbers, because you can have a quicker trigger, because they legitimately have 10 or 11 guys that can go out and be really, really good for you. So I don't know. They have I'm gonna butcher his name, but they have the lefty Valanicious, I believe is how you pronounce it. Apologies if you're listening. You're freaking awesome. I love watching you throw a baseball. And he's kind of their bona fide bro, but they've got big time arms out of that bullpen that I think could ultimately be the difference here. And I think Mississippi State's offense gets slept on a little bit. And for anybody who's followed Coach O'Connor and Mac's careers, they're really hard to pitch against. They are disciplined. They grind out at bats. There's going to be juice. They can run when they need to run. I think Coach O'Connor will have Mississippi State ready to go. I think this goes 3 games, but I think Mississippi State's going to get to Omaha. Eric, what do you got?
There's almost 1,300 combined strikeouts between these two pitching staffs in this regional. They're, I think, 7 short. Like, and to your point, man, this is a really interesting one because Georgia plays as a bandbox, and we're gonna go throw Phil Disher a bone here, and the Georgia South Carolina Super from I don't even know what year that was, 2006, whatever, when South Carolina hits 6 home runs in a row or whatever. This time of year, especially, the ball flies there, and I think that that's what Georgia does really well. But Mississippi State's bullpen, you hit it, you nailed it for me. They can do a lot of things, and I think that the way that O'Connor manages, the guy's won World Series before. He's been to Omaha a bunch of times, and Mac. Has there been a better hitting coach over the last 3 decades, 2.5 decades of college baseball, as far as just taking the best at bats? And I think that's maybe the weakness of Georgia, is if you can really grind them down and get into some of those other arms. I don't think Wes Johnson necessarily wants this to be a bullpen game, a bullpen competition. So sorry, my 9-month-old's crying, if you can hear him. I think I'm right there with you with Mississippi State, but I think this is going to be an awesome one. Like, again, 2 of the better teams in the country, power all over the field, athletes all over the field. Maybe Trey Phelps not playing is going to be the difference in for game 1. Something with Trey Phelps, he got hit 34 times this year. His on base percentage is almost 500, 490. He's on base almost 50% of the time. Like, what a joke. So it's not just that like these teams can hit bolts and stuff like that, but dude, Georgia's on base 44% of the time, and they hit 165 home runs.
Is that good?
Like, I'm just cherry picking here, but like it's so much more. People miss so much more than just like, oh, like Georgia Tech hit a lot of home runs. Well, they get on base all the time too. Same thing with Georgia. Mississippi State, like these teams are so multi-dimensional with how they can beat you, and they put so much pressure on you. Like every guy in the lineup for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in double figures home runs for Georgia. One guy's got 9. 2 guys have 9. Like, dude, you're getting hit that much, you're walking that much, and
Their
any guy can bolt.
20, what he went, 25, 25?
29, yeah. 29, and he's got 25 bags, 25 or 27. But, like, it's just crazy how good these teams are. But I agree. I got Mississippi State, and I think this is more of a nod towards their staff, O'Connor. And maybe Georgia might have the best hitting coach in the country of what Coggin's done the last few years. But I just think the experience, I don't think they expected to be this good this quick. So maybe they're playing with a little bit of house money, they feel like. But my nod here goes a little bit more towards O'Connor than, saying that Mississippi State's just actually better than Georgia.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the experience things will play a big factor in this. I said at the midway point, I said, I felt like if Georgia could keep themselves in that building. They were going to get to Omaha. I'm going to stay with that. I'm just going to give a small nod to the Bulldogs. I guess the Georgia Bulldogs, right? I think the one thing, Eric, I think you brought up, I think, Wes Johnson does not want this thing to be a bullpen series. That does not favor them. But they're going to be home twice. And nothing against Mississippi State. Like, I think Mississippi State could win the whole thing, to be honest. I mean, you hear Coach, you hear Matt Deggs talked about it after they got eliminated by them. And, he was talking about how, again, multifaceted Mississippi State was and how, he's been around a long time. He's, been, doing this at a really high level for a long time. And for him to say, he thinks that, that looked like a team that could win a national championship, I think he's dead right. I think this is another one. I think we're going to probably get 3 games. I'm just going to stay with what I stuck with at the midway point, and I'm going to say the advantage, Georgia in their own building. The team was built to play in that building. Small nod, I guess. We'll go Georgia.
Totally agree, man. Like, if this is at Mississippi State, I think it's slam dunk Mississippi State. But the home runs and the way that ball flies there, and what they want to do, and the pressure that they put on you. The one other thing with Mississippi State too is McPherson being back gives you 3 real starters. He was able to go 5 innings this last weekend. Louisiana's good. They're not Georgia, but him being back and them having 3 bona fide real starters, that's another one for me, because I totally agree. And I think he's going to start game 3 based on how they lined it up last weekend. I don't think they're going to mess with that too much. I think this one goes 3, and I think it's going to be like wild, like some just wild stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm here for it. That was unfortunate to be on the ass whooping side of 2 of the better Virginia teams while I was at William and Mary. And this Mississippi State team reminds me a lot of the 2, the national championship team and the World Series runner-up team at UVA that Coach O'Connor and Mac and that staff put together. And it's gonna be a good one. And we got another all SEC matchup next on the docket with Ole Miss going to Auburn. What do we got here, Eric? Anything good?
Man. I still don't know. I've been thinking about this. I'm really excited about this one. I think this is another like super tight, super close. You're talking about 2 teams that can really pitch. I'm probably leaning Auburn. I think they're a better offensive team. The difference with Ole Miss is wait till you see all these guys get in the box. It's like, dude, every guy that gets in the box for Ole Miss, I'm like, he's going to hit the ball a mile. And again, they're not trying to hit backside ground balls. Maybe you think, and I do think, I know Auburn had a hard time, and it looked like it. They didn't start out very well against Milwaukee, but I still, even when they lost game 1, and like you're kind of going through it, and it's like, dude, I still felt like the whole time they were winning that regional, just because they're so deep on the mound, and I just didn't feel like there was anybody that really stacked up to them in that regional. Ole Miss played those 2 extra inning games, and I think they got pushed a lot. And again, the travel, they're not going far to Auburn, but I think just the cumulative amount of innings they had to throw and stretching some of those guys out, and the travel that's associated with that. I'm going Auburn, I could see this being another just kind of massacre between 2 teams, just beating the absolute shit out of each other. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know if I'm allowed to.
You're good to go.
Okay, great. But yeah, I think Auburn can just do a little bit more. Their pitching's a little bit better. But man, some of the arms that Ole Miss is going to run out there, they're awesome. They do a really good job of throwing carry fastballs at the top of the zone and just I just think Auburn's got a little bit more in there at home, and that atmosphere at night. They actually talked about this. They didn't want to play those games early, but because of weather, they decided to with regionals and stuff. You can, it's the one seed you can pick whether you want the early or the late game, and for playing these games at night, I think the atmosphere and everybody up on the parking deck and stuff. I think that's what's going to push them over a little bit. But this Ole Miss team they're fun to watch, and they play really hard, and they get their hacks off, to quote Brett Baretti, and that's always fun to watch.
What do you got for this one, Jonathan?
Yeah, I love Auburn. You guys know that. I love Auburn. I love that pitching staff. I think it's absolutely legit. I'm just going to go back to, and I know I brought this up early in the year. I said if Ole Miss can pitch, I thought they would find their way, towards the end of the season, playing for something important. And I actually thought about it after I said it last week about, the 2 seed and when I picked them to win that Nebraska regional. Those 2 seeds in the SEC just seem to always do well. When a lot of people are picking against them, and a lot of people are like, there were 1 or 2 above 500 or right at 500 in the SEC. Those teams always seem to do well this time of the year, right? Like those 2 seeds always seem to do well. I'm just going to go slight just because I picked them, and I know I picked Auburn to win their regional, but I don't think that was a shock. I'm going to take Ole Miss here. I just think that if they can pitch it and they can keep themselves in it, that offense can get them to Omaha. So I'm going to take Ole Miss.
I don't really have a great reason to
Can I
pick
jump
Auburn.
in real quick, Andy?
Yeah.
That was one thing I had highlighted. Another reason why I like Auburn is, as much as I've been blowing up their offense and how they take G hacks and stuff, they have struck out 635 times. I mean, so while they're getting their swings off,
little swing bit. Actually, I saw an interview with Bianco, and he's like, "There's some swing and miss in our lineup."
Grasse is totally correct, though. They've been better, and yeah, I still think it's going to be an awesome series. But that was another main point I had for Auburn smidging one out here.
Parents, if you've ever felt overwhelmed trying to navigate youth sports, there's a new resource designed just for you, Team Match. Team Match is an online platform built to streamline how families find the right youth sports teams by location, sport, and skill level, all in one place. It also provides a safe, organized space for kids to share their accomplishments, stats, and highlights, while giving coaches and teams a clear way to connect with athletes who are the right fit. Less searching, less stress, more confidence in the process. Youth sports just got simpler for families. This is Team Match. Check it out today at teammatchsports.com. I think all the points you guys made are valid. I think I'm gonna hang my hat, and I think that this past weekend was like a real wake up call for Auburn. And sometimes it's a good thing to like kind of get kicked in the nuts a little bit. Like, their ace at the front end there, Marciano, like he hadn't got hit like that all year, and I think it was a little bit of a wake up call. I think they're going to be dialed in. The atmosphere at Auburn, if you haven't watched it, it's one of the cooler ballparks in college baseball, in my opinion. It's really unique. That night game atmosphere between 2 teams that, they're not friendly with each other in terms of the fan bases and the rivalry, obviously, with the SEC. So the home field advantage and the fact that I think sometimes having to get a little bit of a gut check is a good thing for teams, and that's why I'm going to pick Auburn. All right. I'm going to head to the East Coast, Chapel Hill. USC flying across the country to face, God, I picked Mississippi State to win the title this year, but this North Carolina team is my favorite team in the tournament. I think they are just the epitome of a really high quality baseball team. Like, they pitch, they play the absolute snot out of defense. They take just professional at bat after professional at bat. It's just clean baseball, and like you look up and they win 6-2, and they just play. They're super hard to beat. Might be the best way to put it. But I love this North Carolina team. They used 7 guys in the whole regional. They threw 7 guys in the whole regional, which I think
I think it was supposed to be the toughest regional.
I heard there were some friends of media outlets that were telling us that this was going to be the toughest regional, and they kind of just made easy work. Like, it was light work. They just kind of dominated from the first pitch. I like this team. They're going to be my pick, but game 1 with Mason Edwards on the mound, UNC is going to have their hands full. I mean, the numbers that kid has put up. I'm assuming UNC will throw DeCaro, which if they can get 5 out of him, I'm sure they'll hand it off to their 2 bullpen studs to try to finish that one out to get game 1. But watching Mason Edwards throw against a really polished UNC lineup is going to be really fun to watch. And Eric, you've brought this up a couple times about metrics and release angles and all the characteristics of a fastball. Like, Edwards is another one of those guys who the velocity numbers aren't going to blow you away, but dudes just have a really hard time getting good quality swings off on his fastball, and he's really fun to watch. So I'm excited for that game 1. I think UNC makes it to Omaha here, but I think this is a sneaky good matchup because of the way that USC has been swinging the bats and the fact that they do have arguably the best left-handed pitcher in the country that's going to throw game 1 for him. So what do you got, Eric?
Big number for me. 32-1 is USC's record at home this year. And they are 12-13 away. And this will be 3 true road games for them across the country. I think that's where a huge edge is. And that's the UNC, they're tough to beat at home. They always have been. And we talked about, if we're going to talk about Mississippi State staff and the continuity with those guys and what they did at UVA, it's the same staff with a new pitching guy. But UNC, I mean, you talk about the top 3 guys. It's, I mean, how long have they all been together? And Gaines was pitching there when the other the other 2 were coaching. So I think that matters. Man, I almost wish USC was going somewhere else because UNC's been my pick all year. I've thought, kind of like what you said, you really break down their numbers and stuff, and it's like, yeah, they're good, but compared to some of the sexier numbers that some of these SEC and so even Georgia Tech and whatever in the ACC, Wake strikeout numbers, they just win, man. They play the shit out of defense. The balls that they throw so many strikes, and this is kind of another one of those situations where we talked about it with how tough it's going to be for St. John's with Alabama being able to line those 3 guys up. UNC wants to use 5 arms, maybe 6. And if they can line these guys up and, USC can hit a little bit better than a lot of West Coast teams. They got a little bit more thump and stuff, but I think these are going to be 3 low scoring games. I could see UNC sweeping. But like, it's just kind of built. These games are going to be built for how both these teams want to play. And I think UNC's got the edge because they're at home. USC's flying across. But this is another situation like Oregon, Big Ten network. We can complain about it. I'm glad that people are going to see how good this team is and how good this pitching staff is. Stankiewicz, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but man, he's done a good job there. Like, dude, this program's been dead for, I don't know, 30 years, 25. I don't know what, they had that little resurgence last decade, but for briefly there was some heat around him. But man, what a job he's done. It's just and it's been quick too. But I think UNC gets it done. It's hard to go against them, especially at their ballpark. They're tough. They're just winners.
I concur.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I love USC. I love everything you just said about USC because I think that staff deserves a ton of credit. But I think this is just a terrible matchup for USC. Like, the more you look at it, like, Andy, I know you said it, I'm going to steal your line. I think you said it last week. UNC just really comfortable winning 6-4. Like they don't even break a sweat. It's just another day at the office. Like they're good. They're totally cool playing, 1, 2, 3-run games all day, every day. Like, doesn't matter to them. They don't need to blow you out. They're not even trying to blow you out, I don't think. I think the wild thing too is that I could easily see USC winning on Friday, but I could see North Carolina winning Saturday, Sunday though. And I think USC having to play the night game last night on Monday, right? This Tuesday. They had to play the night game. This is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday regional. That's a huge disadvantage for USC. And I know they're only coming halfway across the country because they're going to come from Texas. But, they couldn't line the pitching up. They had to come through the losers bracket. This is not the matchup USC wants, in my opinion. And I think if you're North Carolina, kind of like what they do in those 1 and 2 or 3-run games, even if they lose Friday, if Edwards stuffs it on them, I don't even think they break a sweat, right? Like, especially if you don't need to use McDuffie, right? Like, if you have McDuffie lined up with full rest Saturday, Sunday, like, North Carolina's in business at that point. So even if they get a small hiccup, I don't think they're going to. I think it's going to be 2 games. I just think, again, nothing against USC. They've done a phenomenal job coming out of that losers bracket, in Texas A&M. But I don't know. This is North Carolina. They're built for this. It just seems like.
Yeah, that's a clean sweep with Coach Glass agreeing with UNC as well. You brought up a good point about USC. Like for people who haven't watched college baseball or don't know a ton about the history of college baseball, USC still has the most national championships by like a fairly wide margin. And that's been done a lot. The last one was a long time ago, and USC it just hadn't been really a factor in college baseball in a long time. And I think they're back. I don't think they're going anywhere either. Like, I think this is the first big step to USC being a legitimate factor in college baseball again, which I think the sport's always better when you have brand names like that are legitimately in the mix to make something happen. I think them coming out of the losers bracket against A&M, like, it's just the difficulty to pull that off. The team's obviously tough. They're resilient. I think they're going to put up a good fight, but give me the Tar Heels.
Their last one was in 98.
1998.
And they have 12. So they haven't won a national title in the lifespan of any of their players. But I think it's awesome that you mentioned it. USC they're a blue blood program, like in college baseball. But you have that rivalry with UCLA reignited. Awesome. Their series against Oregon was awesome up in Oregon. Like, and I think that's good for the Big 12, or sorry, the Big 10. Big 12 is fine. Whatever. They're good. But the Big 10, has been let's call it what it is. They've been a real snoozer. Michigan's been disappointing for the last decade or so. They've had some good teams. Illinois has run some good teams out there. Maryland's had its bright spots. Purdue's had a couple good seasons where they popped up out of nowhere. I think Ohio State's on the up and up. Like they've looked great, but man, you have 3 teams. UCLA probably the most disappointing of the teams in regionals this year, but you have 3 real teams that midway through the year out of the big Nebraska too. Sorry, that's like another. I mean, they had a great year. They've been great the last few years, and it doesn't look like that's changing. But you you have 3 West Coast teams that are injected into that league that halfway through the year, you could be like, any one of these 3 teams could win a national championship potentially. And I think that's great for the Big Ten. And, you're going to see some programs that just aren't going to care. But then, I'm curious to see what happens, with these 3 teams, with Nebraska and the crowd that they pull every game. Is this going to elevate Ohio State? I think, what's his name? He was at Campbell. I know we joke about the meat wagon and stuff. But dude, that guy's a winner. And is Ohio State going to look around and be like, we need to match this? Or are they going to be like, whatever? And that's clearly what some of the Big Ten teams have done in programs. They're focused on football, and that's fine. But I think these 3 West Coast teams, and with the success that Nebraska's had, I think you might have the opportunity here for a couple of these kind of meddling Big Ten programs to step up and be like, hey, this is a real thing for us now. Let's go do some cool stuff. And I'm curious to see. I feel like there's going to be a couple that are going to jump on board with it. And you also have Washington. Washington's kind of in a little bit of turmoil right now, but they've done better the last. They really outperformed last year. So you've got some interesting things happening potentially in the Big Ten that I think is great for baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's few and far between where you could legitimately look at the Big Ten and go, there's a team in there that could win a national championship. And now moving forward, there's going to be 3 or 4 of them. And in any given year where you're going, one of those guys, they could win it.
Yeah. And this is with Indiana being terrible this year.
Yep.
That's a place that really, maybe not as much as football, obviously, but that's a place that cares about baseball. And, next couple of years, I wouldn't be surprised if they're back in to what they have been. So I think it's great, these 3 West Coast teams and what they've done, and hopefully elevating the rest of the league and kind of kicking some of them in the butt and forcing the administration to do something about it.
All right. The least sexy of the regionals, but also probably one of the cooler ones in a lot of ways. Got Little Rock. I mean, they were kind of a darling, Cinderella-ish last year, made a run and got in. And this year they didn't really sneak up on anybody, a much more competitive regular season. I think they ended the regular season with 36 wins. And I mean, shoot, they just played well, and they're in the Super. And Troy coming out of the losers bracket, Troy was one of those teams that I think you could have made a really strong case that they shouldn't have been in the tournament. They're, certainly one of the last 4 in. They're in. They played really well this weekend, and because of the circumstances in other regionals, they're going to host one, which is, I mean, that's as cool as it gets. I think Troy's going to move on here. I think there's just a little bit more talent there. I think they're playing really well. I think they're a little bit more battle tested. Well, that's tough to say after what Little Rock did in the regional, but I think Troy played a really challenging schedule this year. Shout out to Coach Meade for kind of making some adjustments with some criticisms that a lot of mid-majors have been given around RPI and strength of schedule and, playing on the road and doing all that kind of stuff. And Troy really challenged themselves, won enough games in a good conference to ultimately get that at-large bid. And I think we're going to see Troy I think we're going to see them in Omaha. So what do you got on this one, Jonathan?
So here's my take. I was thinking about this earlier, and I think this is really cool. And hopefully, a lot of kids are listening to this, because I think this is a really cool thing about this regional. This regional is filled with players who were told no somewhere, where you were told, no, you can't go to Division I out of high school and you have to go to junior college. We're told, no, hey, we brought you in to XYZ place, SEC, Power 4 conference, just doesn't work. You got to go in the portal. You got to get out of here. But this Super is filled with those kids. You look at all the transfers, all the JUCO guys. It's awesome. And it's awesome because it just goes to show you, just stay with it. Just keep working. Just don't let people tell you no, right? And you will have an opportunity to keep doing it. So I think that's really cool. I think it's a really cool storyline for this regional or this super. I'm sorry. I think you made a really good point, though, Andy. I think Troy with the schedule, they're just a little bit more battle tested. I think, sometimes when you're that 4 seed, you kind of ride it high with Little Rock, and sometimes the Cinderella story ends. I wouldn't be shocked if Little Rock gets out of this super, but I'm just going to give a little bit of a nod to Troy here.
Where are you at with this one, Eric?
I agree. Troy's at home. But same, look at like Little Rock's roster. They got a ton of guys that from Power 5 schools, bigger schools, that got told to take a hike. I think that means something for them. They expected to play in these environments, and they're doing it in a totally a different uniform than probably their original plan. But exactly what Jonathan was saying, like, dude, you got to keep working. You got to keep grinding away. God, I hate that word. We're not stonemasons. Like we don't work in a coal mine. You got to keep plugging away. But I got Troy. They're going to have the best player on the field. Janicki is, he's the best guy. But man, if you watch Little Rock, and we talked about the velocity before, you watch these two teams and you're like, oh, mid-major teams, like, dude, there's going to be some juice on the mound. Both of these teams they've got some guys that throw the ball hard. Look, I think Florida, we've joked about Florida all year in our group chat. And, maybe Troy was just a little like, if Troy had been the Yankees, we're talking about Little Rock against going to Florida probably. But, it's still what they did. Dude, beating Florida 2 times in a row. And I know they're super flawed and they've got a lot of issues, but dude, that guy can coach with anybody. Like, that guy puts really good teams together. And they just, dude, those last couple games down there, they just waxed Florida. Didn't even look like Florida belonged on the field with them. And I will say this up front, I don't think Troy should have been in a regional. And even with them making it out, I don't think they should have made regionals. They're 35-30 right now. Like, dude, I don't think you should get into a regional with that record. And I still don't think they should have been in a regional, but I think they're going to be in the World Series. And it kind of goes back to it. It's like, man, it's hard to win a regional. And I think they're more talented than Little Rock. They have better players. They're going to have, again, I'm big on, if you have the best player on the field, I think you have an edge. They're going to have head and shoulders the best player of both of these teams, and he's a huge impact. He touches the ball on almost every play because of his position. And, he's got the most home runs. The ball's going to fly there. It plays as a bandbox. I think they've got more juice than Little Rock. They've got about 20-some more home runs. But it's not a cakewalk. And there's going to be some good players on both sides of the ball, even though they're both mid-majors. And I think it'll probably be the least viewed regional, but I think it's cool for these mid-major programs that can play. And, again, Little Rock's got Power 5 kickbacks littered on their roster. So these guys can play. They have talent. And I just think Troy's they're just better. They're a better team, and they're going to have the best player.
Coach Glasser agrees with you. Clean sweep, Troy. Last regional, Cal Poly. We've got another West Coast team flying to, I guess we'll call West Virginia the East Coast. Technically no coastline, but we'll give it to them. The atmosphere in Morgantown was just, those last 2 games with Kentucky, like, I know Coach Mazey came out and said it's the best atmosphere in college baseball. I don't know about that, but it's freaking up there. it's a really cool setup. It's going to be a tough place to play for Cal Poly for sure. I think West Virginia's just got some mojo. Really talented group of players. The Kelly kid he'll be the best player in the regional. There's not a lot of games that kid plays in that he's not the best player, and I think that goes to your point, Eric. That like sometimes just having a guy like that's a difference maker. It's hard not to like Sabins. He's just got a way about him that you can tell that those kids love playing for him. They love being at West Virginia, and I think that says a lot. I think they're playing for a little bit more than just the uniform, if you will. I think there's like genuine camaraderie and like a brotherhood there. At least that's the feeling that I get. With that being said, Cal Poly is playing exactly how we thought they were going to play when we talked on the preseason podcast, where this team was set up to be a regional team. We just didn't think it was going to have to be them winning the Big West. We thought they were going to be an at-large team. Eric, you know a lot more about these guys, but they play really, really good baseball, and there's a lot of talented players on this roster, and it's another really good opportunity for folks who don't watch a lot of West Coast stuff to see one of these West Coast teams play in a hostile environment that's going to be televised, and you get a really good feel for how good the baseball is that's being played out there. So I got West Virginia. It's hard for me to pick against them with the home field advantage, and I think man for man they're a little bit better. What they did to beat Kentucky was fantastic. So I got West Virginia, but I think this Poly team will put up a pretty good fight.
Yeah, I think West Virginia is better. Man, I want to pick Cal Poly so bad. Before I get to that, I was selfishly hoping. I don't know. Selfishly is the wrong word. I was really hoping that Kentucky was going to beat West Virginia, just so there was a chance that Cal Poly was going to host, because I want everybody in the country to know that stadium. I mean, dude, that place. When Larry Lees retires, there's going to be people lining up at the AD's door to interview if they don't hand it to somebody that's already in the program. Like, dude, the Central Coast of California, my God. All right, we'll get over it. But I mean, and they actually like lead the West Coast in like attendance and stuff too. They draw really well. It's a really cool place. But some interesting things with them. They can really pitch. Their pitching coach Seth, he does an unbelievable job. I mean, they're probably one of the only West Coast schools that has Kinetrax, which, you know, having that resource. They've got good starters. Bond out of the bullpen. I mean, wait till you see this guy throw. If you haven't seen him yet, he's 5'10", 150 pounds maybe, and you know he's touched 100 this year. It's nitro. They can pitch. Something really unique with their offense. They play in a lot of graveyards. They play against a lot of teams where it's hard to hit the ball out of the yard. And they have 60 bolts, but they have 10 guys with double-digit doubles. So you know they've actually got more power than you would think, and especially for a West Coast team, they play a little bit different on offense. They don't bunt as much. They don't run at all. Their defense has actually been kind of shaky this year, so playing on turf at West Virginia is probably good for them. Man, I want to take them. I'm going to take Cal Poly. I think West Virginia is a better team. You know, the question mark surrounding Yell is interesting to me with him coming out of that game early. You know, West Virginia's bullpen and they have better arms. Not that I don't think Cal Poly's are good. They got draft arms. Cal Poly's got draft arms up and down their roster. Man, West Virginia's run game could be the difference. Cal Poly's, again, like surprisingly giving up more bags than you would think from a really good West Coast team. I'm just going to pick them because I pulling on my heartstrings a little bit, but I think this is actually a really good regional. But yeah, Gavin Kelly probably going to be a top 5-10 pick. It's going to be on Team USA this summer. Going to be the best guy on the field at all times. But I think that See, Cal Poly, they're not going to be intimidated. They're going to go in there. They're going to play super hard. They're going to put the bat on the ball. They're going to hit line drives into the gap. They're going to put some pressure on them. I think this is actually a sneaky cool two teams that actually are very similar. Not a lot of juice, two really good pitching staffs. I'm going to go Cal Poly, but I do think West Virginia is just a better team. But I'm going to go Cal Poly.
Coach Grossay.
This is one for me. I think that I have a little bit of a gripe with the NCAA on this one. You know, Cal Poly wasn't sure last night, you know, up until about 9:30 Eastern time, where they were going, if they even had to travel, right? Because there was a possibility we've seen, you know, kind of the report that they went all in to host it. Kentucky would have won that game last night, which went into extras. You know, they could have been staying at home. They didn't find out till, you know, maybe we'll call it 11 Eastern time. And now they have to turn around. They have the noon game on Friday. So I think the NCAA could have did a little bit of a better job. I'm not saying that anyone deserved to have the noon game, because I know it's TV and they have to go with all that stuff, and they're going to put somebody in that. Somebody has to play on that noon slot on Eastern time. I get it, you know, and it is what it is. And, you know, but I don't think that's great for Poly. I don't necessarily know if it's totally fair. I also think it's going to be a better series than people think. I don't think, like, if you're just a casual fan and you're just looking at this, be like, oh, well, West Virginia, like Big 12, you know, they're runner up in, you know, in the regular season, runner up in the tournament. Like, yeah, they're 15 seed, like they're going to pound. Now that ain't happening here, I don't think. I think you're going to get at least two good games. You know, they may win both. But I think it's going to be closer than people think. I think that there's going to be, you know, both or all three will go down to the wire. I think they're a little bit more evenly matched, because I don't know, with West Virginia having to come out of the losers bracket, I think tax their arms a little bit, kind of back to what we just said with, you know, the Monday game, the night game, had to bring guys back. They had to beat Kentucky twice in, you know, basically 24 hours ish. I think it's going to be tighter than people think. I'm going to take West Virginia. I'm a little bit biased. Coach Rossinger is a good friend of mine. I was talking with him this morning. He was all fired up. I'm going to go Morgantown, you know, and West Virginia gets to Omaha for the first time ever.
Well, there we have it. Picks are in. They will be held against you.
But I don't even remember half of my picks. Just so
don't worry, I wrote them down.
Are you gonna make one of those graphics and put it on Twitter and just like roast us and like let all these burner accounts like tell me how dumb I am?
I do not want to be subject to it. Some of these burner accounts for college baseball are. You could argue that some of them may cross the line, but you can't argue that they're not funny, because some of these burner accounts are just, oh boy. But we got a really good weekend of baseball coming up, and yeah, it's some really good storylines. You got some underdogs, you got some blue bloods, you got some in-conference bashes that are going to take place. You got West Coast coming east. There's a lot of really cool stuff to unpack here, and I think all I really have left to say is, if you're a college baseball fan, you know, find a way to sit down and watch some of these. Should be a good show, and we'll be back next week to figure out what the heck we got wrong and talk about what's going to happen in the College World Series. So, anything else from you two gentlemen?
That was fun.
Yeah, I got. If I get more picks right than Keith, I get to take his spot again.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You heard it here, listeners. You heard it here. If Coach Shipley's on the pod next week, you know that Coach Glasser failed in his picks. You guys do have several picks that are different. So
what do we have different? What do we have different?
He's got
Cal Poly. He's got to have West Virginia.
He's got St. John's in Oregon, in Georgia, and Ole Miss. So you have four of your
wrong.
picks. Yeah,
he's wrong.
He's wrong.
So, what time next week should I plan on
We'll make sure that you're on the invite.
But yeah, you're right on. Like, there's so many good players in this. Like it's, dude, some of these matchups, you're really like, you're splitting so many hairs with these teams. It's going to be so legit. Pretty fired up for us.
Yeah,
Saturday, you get 8 games too, which is just so legit. Like, I mean, like it goes, I believe the first pitch is thrown at 11 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday.
That's 8 a.m. out.
Yeah, get that coffee brewing, baby.
Been rolling out of bed and just grabbing Archer and plopping him down.
That's it.
Can't wait.
Here,
Young
buddy,
man, this is what a good day looks like.
Archer's going to learn about approach angles and spin axis and what a rise fastball looks like.
Man, we're so far into TrackMan CSVs with him already. He's already got the right columns picked out that that he's looking at.
Learning the best way. But all right, well, thank you everybody for listening. Tune in next week. We'll talk to you then. Thank you for listening this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button for us. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EMD Baseball. If you want to find out what me and Keith do to help families and players navigate the recruiting process, go ahead and check us out on emdbaseball.com. Take a few minutes to check out our new online academy. I promise you'll get some good information out of that. Thanks again for listening. Check in with you next week.